Assalamu alaikum. Peace, love, and light, family. Inshallah, everybody is doing well. Juma Mubarak to all the Muslims, Bifal, Muradeen, Sufis, and mystics the world over. Praise Allah.
Walaikum
Al-Fat.
salam, Cheikh.
Assalamu alaikum. I pray that you and yours is doing well. Ameen. Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. With the name of Allah, the most lovingly kind, the most infinitely merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all planes of existence, the most lovingly kind, the most infinitely merciful, the master of the day of awakening. You alone do we worship, and you alone do we trust. O Allah, guide us on the straight path, the path of those who have attained, not of the discordant, nor of those who are lost. So shall it be. Surah Al-Ikhlas. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul Allahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad wa Lam Yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Right. So I pray that everybody is doing well today. I wanted to begin with a prayer. And this is a new prayer, one that I don't believe anybody has heard before. I will be sharing it in English. There are some gems buried deep inside of it. So if you are able to do so, I invite you to sit back and close your eyes and be open to receiving with the most holy name, the ever-loving, the most loving. O Lord, you are one, the source of all in existence and outside of existence. You are without shape and without form. You exist within and without, above and below, and across all planes. You are the creator, sustainer, destroyer, the beginning, before the beginning, and the eternal happening. You are the light that shines forth through the darkness and illuminates the heart of creation. You are love, lover, and the beloved, the everlasting, ever existing, omnipresent, omnipotent, and you are the Most High. You have been invoked by every name spoken by man. You are both the silence and the word. You are everlasting and self-subsisting, the source of infinite love, knowledge, and bliss, the triune of perfection, harmony, and beauty. Truly, O Lord, you are the infinite ocean of love, the infinitely compassionate, and ever merciful, and the only being worthy of worship. O Lord, call us to your divine light so that we may become one with you. I am he whom I love, and he whom I love is me. I am he whom I love, he whom I love is me. I am she whom I love, and she whom I love is me. I am she whom I love, and she whom I love is me. I am he whom I love, and he whom I love is me. I am she whom I love, and she whom I love is me. Barke Shaky for fall. Okay. Zikr Allahu, Allah Akbar, Allahu. Allahu 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 Akbar. Allahu. There is nothing greater in this world than Allah. There is only Allah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad, 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 sallallahu ala Muhammad sallallahu Allah, 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 Muhammad Muhammad sallallahu Allah, 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 Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon Muhammad Mustafa. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Muhammad wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Malaniya ya Muhammad bin Nabila Umila wa lawahi wa sallam. For the next few minutes here, I want you to do with me, if you'd like, a zikr, a very special zikr of the most holiest of names, the Ism-e-Allah Zat, the name of Allah's essence. With each inhale, I want you to imagine Ya. And with each exhale, I want you to imagine Hu. I don't want you to say those words. I just want you to know that with each inhalation, you're invoking Oh. Each exhalation, you're proclaiming Hu. Breath is always chanting the name of God, whether we're conscious or unconscious of the fact. Blessed be those who are conscious that their body is praising Allah day and night. It's closer to you than your jugular vein. As you're doing this zikr, the zikr kafi, the hidden zikr, the zikr you can do in the marketplace, the zikr where nobody knows that you and your lover are within the bedchamber of your own heart, and you are screaming his name, Yahu. Outwardly sober, inwardly intoxicated. Okay, so let's see who we got here. Got a nice intimate gathering here, some beautiful soul people. All right. So thank you all for joining today. I am really looking forward to today's Darrah talk. The subject of today's talk is actually a subject that I've been interested for a long time, but I seldom really talk about it. And that is Sufism as spiritual psychology. And my hope for this talk is to cover a lot of material relatively quickly. So it's an introduction, and inshallah, we can expand upon this in a future classes. But my real ultimate hope is to make Sufism practical, or rather introduce it in a way that's practical from perhaps maybe another lens that you've not been exposed to before. Maybe you have, but I want to just make it plain. If at any point in time anybody has any questions, just please interject. Let me know, and God willing, I have the answer for you. Anything in this talk, this presentation that is helpful, anything that is true comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. and was given to me as a gift from our master, our Sheikh Amadou Bamba, and any errors that I present, any mistakes, are solely that of my own doing. So Sufism, the path of Sufism, presented as a practical and applied spiritual psychology. So first, let's kind of get a definition out of the way. Sufism is a method of elevating the soul from its most lowest base self to its highest and most refined true self. It is both a system of diagnosis as well as a prescription to identify and remedy the maladies of the soul. That then begs the question, what are the maladies of the soul? Well, we could do a whole talk on the maladies of the soul, but let's keep it plain, let's keep it simple, let's keep it direct. If we were to reduce the seemingly infinite of afflictions our soul might have, we can really reduce it to attachments to the illusory idea of the egoic self. An attachment to the illusory idea of the egoic self. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions? Anybody want to build on that idea? Well, what might we mean? An attachment to the illusory idea of the egoic self.
Assalamu alaikum. Can I say something?
Walaikum assalam, beloved. Please do.
So based on what I'm thinking, it is the way we look at ourselves and the different roles that we are playing, the different relationships that we all are having, and the characters that we fill in. So if, for instance, somebody has a certain job title or somebody has any kind of status in the community, and that relationship to their existence currently being manifested here on whatever level it is, will be an illusion that will take that soul away from the personal identification of the purpose of you being here in the now. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم.
Yahak, that is beautifully said, and I thank you so much for sharing. And we got to get together sometime here in Cali. I hope that our paths cross soon, inshallah.
Inshallah, Cheikh.
Happy that you're here with us. Thank you for that. That's absolutely correct. We wear identities like we put on clothes. One moment you're a mommy or a daddy or a coworker or the person on at the line at the store. You're a Muslim, you're a man, you're a mystic, you're politics or this or that, whatever. We wear these identities like garments, and then we forget that they are external to ourselves. We completely identify with these adopted identities. When the soul is reintroduced into this physical world, the soul is an absolute blank slate, and things are imprinted upon it. And those imprints cause attachments, which leads me directly to the second part of this, is that attachments to illusions are formed by impressions. Now, the Sufi Islamic Arabic word here is nukush-i-amal, or for those who may have studied some Hindu philosophy, they might be familiar with the concept of samskaras. But these are impressions that are molded into the very fabric of our psyche. It's like a string that gets tied into a knot. the nature of the string is not to be tied up, it's to be free. If you can work with that analogy, we have a series of different impressions and identities that become interwoven, and they don't become independent, they become interwoven, tied, and tangled, and we're all confused, and we're constantly searching for outlets and ways to correspond behavior with identities we adopt both individually and roles that we subconsciously expect society has upon us. Does that make sense to anybody? Or is that just some nonsense? What do you think? Again, we're talking from a psychology perspective. Do we sometimes play the role, even subconsciously, that we expect society, that society expects of us to fulfill? I think so. I suspect that many of you do. Many of you folks do think that as well. So then the question then becomes, well, what is the goal? What's the purpose? Well, the goal is to efface or exhaust completely all impressions and to strip away all falsehoods until all that remains is Allah, the truth. Now, that's a tall order, is it not? That's a tall order. So here's the catch. Impressions are effaced through cycles of birth and rebirth of the soul. You might think of this as working out karma. This requires unequivocally the grace of a perfect spiritual master. You can't do this on your own. And thank Allah that all of us here have been chosen by Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Karim Razul. He is our perfect spiritual guide, helping us to untie those knots and to release us from the accumulated impressions. Does anybody have any questions on that? Insights, thoughts, contributions you'd like to share? There's no wrong answers here.
I guess I'm imagining it more like an actor. These roles that you play are not you, but are a facade, are a character you're playing. Well, underneath it all, the true character of who you are is the nature of oneness.
I mean, that's spot on. It's as if somebody was on stage doing a theater production and they forgot that they're playing the role of the attorney or playing the role of the fireman while acting on stage, and they completely identify with that character to the point where they forget who they truly are and they think they are that character being played. And this is exactly what you're talking about. So thank you. That's beautiful. I shared in the chat some hand-drawn diagrams. If you have that available, please look at figure 1. So I think I wasn't sure whether or not this to be included in this conversation because I could spend a whole talk on it. But I do think since we talked upon the nature of impressions and how that relates to our psychology, I think it's important to address it quickly. So if you have that diagram, figure 1, you'll see the first circle up top is the majul unat, the azal azal, the essence, the absolute essence. This is alam-i-hahut in Islamic cosmology. It is nothing exists except for who, the only thing in singularity, absolute, transcendent oneness. That transcendent oneness that is who, self-reflected, creating a copy of itself, seemingly, not literally, we're using metaphors. And in that emanation, that self-reflection, a second stage of that who emerges, and that who cried out, Yahoo, O He, O Lord, and that is Allah. Now, Allah is spirit, absolute total spirit. And the soul is like an infinite ocean. And all of our souls are like infinite drops within the infinite ocean. It's one and the same. But it's as if a bubble of ignorance coats each individual drop soul, creating the impression of separateness, of otherness. So the soul, from the very beginning, is unmanifest. It is unqualified, unqualifiable. It is without attributes. And physical matter, the material world, are progressive stages, progressive schools for the soul to have a diverse array of impressions. And once a physical mold has exhausted all possible experiences, the form is dropped, the soul is liberated, and the soul thus requires a slightly more advanced medium to have every possible experience a soul could have within that medium. You see reality, the soul, and once matter starts to form, the soul thus becomes associated with stones and metals. And the soul must have every possible experience stones and metals could have. Every type of stone, every type of metal on every part of the planet, falling from this height, that height, bumping into each other, breaking this way, cracking that way, millions upon millions of years potentially. The soul must have every accountable experience until the physical vessel that contains it is no longer needed. All impressions have now been erased. The soul moves on to the next form. And in this figure, I've simplified it to vegetation. All types of plant life, vegetables, worms, invertebrates, fish, vertebrates, aquatic, birds, animals, and the soul comes to its highest state of consciousness in the most perfect medium possible for the soul to self-reflect upon itself, and that's in the form of humans, or humans. And thus physical evolution is complete. You can see the soul and thus consciousness accompanies physical evolution. But once man, woman, humankind, becomes self-conscious, they are conscious of their consciousness, and they are endowed with consciousness, creativity, and an independent drive, a desire to mold the world around them to fulfill their needs, to build, to destroy, to behave like gods on earth. Dominion, mulk, malikul mulk. But there's a difference between biological humanity and social humanity. Biological humanity is biologically human, but is socially animalistic. They are on the lowest level of the soul, only seeking sex, shelter, food, primitive urges. But as the soul and consciousness involutes, then we transcend the 7 stations of the soul. As the evolution of the soul, you see, we go from 1 all the way up to 7. Stations of the soul 1 through 3 correspond to consciousness of the gross material world. The material world. The fourth station of the soul is aware of the subtle world. It's subtle conscious. And it's a threshold. That's a talk for another time. Stations 5 and 6 are the mental realms. You are a wali, you are a saint at 5 and 6. But in order to cross the threshold from 6 to 7, you need a perfect guide. You need a master like Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba Kadim Razul. You can go so far, but you cannot cross that threshold to merger with absolute oneness without the hands of a perfect master guiding you there. I'm going to leave it there on this particular point. This is a side tangent. I hope that you found that portion interesting, and I hope that this is something that you want to talk about within greater depth. But in order to understand impressions and psychology, we need to know the two most fundamental aspects. The first being impressions, and that requires the guidance of a perfect master to help us work out those impressions. Any questions on that until I go to the second portion of that section? Was that confusing? Was it clear? We're not sure, maybe?
Peace.
Peace.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
This is Brother Lampfall from Detroit.
Brother Lampfall, thank you for joining. I want to hear what you got to say.
What I'm hearing is La ilaha illallah. There is Allah is the only one worthy of worship, but also Allah is the only reality. I'm also hearing die before you die. Now, this is why Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, Ahmadou Rasulullahi, Muhammadur Rasulullahi. This is why he is so amazing. He's brought these teachings directly from Allah. Again, Allah is the only reality. And provided the teachings so we could get back to Allah by mastering the 7 stations of the soul, which the perfect being, the teacher, is the one who has died before they died and, you know, is living in the oneness with Allah. And they'll, through their personal experience and their teachings, will be able to assist us in overcoming the attachments, the impressions, the actors, the voices, the lower self, desires, passions, things of that nature. The teachings of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba.
There's nothing else I can add on to that. That kind of closes the book on the discussion. That's absolutely correct. That is you summarized perfectly the essence of this portion. All those expressions that you hear, die before you die, the formula of La ilaha illallah. I mean, these things, that La ilaha illallah contains all of what was just said and more. It's, mysticism is it's almost like the art of trying to verbally express that which you can't verbally express without missing or misrepresenting the truth. But sometimes we get a good snapshot of what we're trying to say, and I think Sheikh Lampfall, you hit the nail on the head. I thank you for your contribution. Praise Allah.
Alhamdulillah. La ilaha illallah.
La ilaha illallah. Muhammadur Rasulullah. So then, if we require the grace of a perfect spiritual guide, then do we need to do anything? Do we need to just sit around and let things unfold on their own? Well, the answer is no. No, not at all. Falsehoods, not the effacement of impressions, but the correcting from false vision to correct vision, are removed by following the prescriptions of Islam and the Sufi path. So what I've done now is I've drafted a non-comprehensive list of expressions and terms and concepts I want to share. Most of these you've probably heard before, and perhaps some of them you have not. So what then is the means of diagnosing and prescribing, diagnosing our conditions and prescribing remedies to help elevate the soul and consciousness? Well, the first most important thing, period, is tauba. Tauba is the most crucial first thing. Tauba is a recognition that you're sick, turning the heart away from falsehood towards the truth of Allah, knowing that you need more, knowing that there's a greater truth, knowing that it's like as if being in the darkness and you see a glimmer of light, and then you turn to that light. You no longer crave the darkness. You want the light. Tauba, the turning of the heart, the repentance of the way of false behaviors. Without tauba, the path doesn't start. I feel quite confident saying that every single one of us here, if it wasn't for tauba, we would have never stepped foot on this path. There was something telling us there was more. There was something calling us at the innermost essence of our being, redirecting us from wayward ways that we behaved and calling us to the truth, to light. And we decided to take a step into that light, into the unknown. So the first thing we just need to get out of the way is without tauba, without a recognition of a illness of the soul, you can never start the path of reintegration of self. Once we have committed, once we've had tauba, then comes what's called muhasaba'un nafs, or sometimes talilul nafs. And this is the equivalent to psychological self-analysis. What am I doing? Why am I drinking 40s? Why am I going to the club? Now, what's motivating me to do that? Why am I looking to cheat people if the opportunity presents itself? Why am I behaving this way? It takes a very important self-observation. We have to analyze what's driving these behaviors. What's driving this? Why do I do this? I'm sure we've all felt that at one point in our lives. Why am I doing this? What reason am I doing this? You know, in a past life, I used to smoke a blunt on my way to smoke a blunt. Why am I doing this? What's compelling me to do that? So without muhasaba'un nafs, we can't really start to develop if we're not willing to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, why do I behave that way? Why do I get triggered when he says? Why do I get triggered when she says? Why does my patience seem to be low when this occurs? Why do I lose my cool when ... This is practical application of Sufism in everyday life. And there is no difference between everyday life and the spiritual life. They're the same life. There are people who sometimes think, I go to work, I behave this way, and then I go home, and then I behave spiritually. No, you need to be spiritual when you're washing the dishes, and you need to be spiritual when you're doing zikr, and you need to be spiritual when you're in your meeting at work. It's the one and the same. Self-analysis, self-evaluation. The next thing I have on my list here is the importance of Jamaat, community. Grapes on a vine grow together. If you want the most intoxicating wine, you have to have a well cared for, nurtured vineyard. That's why the Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba International Sufi School and other Sufi organizations and other organizations that aren't Sufi but like this are so important. We're in this together. We keep each other accountable. We are inspirations to one another. I may not always vocalize it. Most of the time I don't, but I see you all. And somebody will say one thing. I'm like, wow, man, yeah, that is exactly what I needed to hear or see at that exact moment in time. Allah is the best planner, but we need to have a community, a Jamaat. And I don't mean just going to masjid. That's important. That plays a role. But this plays a deeper role from a spiritual perspective. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? What we've said so far, Tauba, Musahaba, Unafs, and Jamaat. All right, moving along. Tazkiyatu nafs. Sheikh Sufi has essentially said that Sufism is Tazkiyatu nafs, and Tazkiyatu nafs is Sufism. So Tazkiyatu nafs is oftentimes referred to as perfecting the soul or polishing the mirror of the heart. But to keep it even more plain, it's purification of negative qualities. So a simple, practical way of thinking about it, overeating is a negative quality. So purifying yourself of that quality is tazkiyatu nafs. Because there's something in your soul that is addicted to eating, to use this example. It could be anything. So purification of negative qualities, negative attributes. Continuing with our list, we have muraqabah. Now, muraqabah is sometimes just referred to as meditation, and there's different types of meditation, as you know. But what I want to mention it from a slightly different angle. It's not just meditation, but really it's self-observation. It's observing the self. It's similar to self-analysis, but the subtle difference is within an analysis, you are using the intellect to try to logically reason why you behave a way that you do. But in muraqabah, you are not applying reason, you are simply observing. Just observing. There's a Zen story, if I recall correctly, where his Zen monk, he was the head monk at the Shaolin monastery, and it was considered an honor for the younger disciples to accompany the monk in the morning and the evening to see the sunrise and the sunset. But he had one condition, that the disciples are forbidden from saying a single word. Well, of course, one day a young disciple is with the master and they're watching the sunset. They're silent, and this young disciple can't help himself. He says, wow, what a beautiful sunset. In absolute frustration, the master turns around, walks away, shuns the disciple. Well, another disciple, went to the master and says, master, Why don't dismiss him. You know, he didn't mean anything by it. It was an honest mistake. You know, I don't even understand what's the point of this rule anyway. And the master says, the minute he thought and articulated what a beautiful sunset, he ceased to experience the beautiful sunset. In short, he created an impression. So that's why self-observation is so crucial. It's a space in which we're able to observe, not critically or uncritically, but just observe neutrally the contents of the self, the inner workings of our soul. Moving along, we have fikr, which is oftentimes translated as simply contemplation or meditation. But there's a subtle difference here. In contemplation, we are contemplating a thing. We're singling out an aspect of self to observe. Like a singular incident. You might replay a singular incident in the mind. Not every time you lost your temper, but a specific time you lost your temper. And you may revisit that scenario in your mind over and over and over again, analyzing what do you see, what do you taste, what do you hear, what are you feeling, almost like you're reliving it. You're contemplating this snapshot in time. You're observing, you're in a three-dimensional sense moving through that space. And that's what I mean by contemplation. There's a more nuanced meaning behind it than simply contemplate, think about, because you're not necessarily thinking, you are re-experiencing. Any questions or comments up to this point? We've got a little bit more to cover. Okay, moving along, we have what I think is one of the most important aspects of Sufism, and I would love to do future talks on this. Raki Malamat, right? The path of blame, Malamatia. This is a Sufi school, a Sufi tariqa in and of itself. It's also a technique that Sufis adopt. The path of blame. So there's two sides to this coin. One is incurring blame upon yourself, blaming yourself, your egoic self. The other is allowing other people to blame you. Now, if you're able to remain calm, if you're able to not have your ego get triggered and kick into gear when you're being blamed, that demonstrates a maturity on the path. If somebody was reciting a prayer here in Arabic and I said, you know, that I've heard better Arabic pronunciation, and you felt triggered by that, you know that there's, I mean, I was being a jerk, that's for sure. But I blamed you for poor Arabic pronunciation and you got upset. The path of blame would be in that moment, you don't get upset. In fact, maybe you deliberately mispronounce the Arabic words to incur blame as a means of humbling your ego so you're not proud of how great your Arabic pronunciation is. Likewise, another example would be you do a blameworthy action for a greater good. So I'm going to tell you a real life example that I had. My wife's family is from Latin America. Her grandmother is from Chile. And I'm sure you probably already know there's a lot of pork food in that culture. Well, when we were dating and I visited Abuela for the first time, she cooked us a delicious pork dinner. Oh, now I had to ask myself, do I decline the food that grandma cooked me lovingly, with a desire to welcome me to the family, to show her love, her hospitality? Do I insult that generous thought by saying, I don't eat that? Or do I engage in a blameworthy activity by consuming the pork in this instance for the greater adab, the spiritual adab, the benefit of knowing that it's better to take blame and behave in a blameworthy way if that elevates somebody else and brings love and light to them. Now, that does not mean that you get a license to eat pork whenever you want, right? I'm talking, there are moments where you have to make a choice. And if you consciously choose the other person over you, even at the expense of looking blameworthy, what if we were in a restaurant and all my Morid brothers and sisters were there and they saw me eating pork ribs? I would imagine that the first thought would be astaghfirullah. But within that context, you understand what's occurring. The context, it's not going out to do or trying to convince yourself, oh, I need to go do something bad because I like it. No, it's a very subtle nuance. That's why it's the path of the most saintly of the saints. Walk this thread every day. Integrating a little bit of that into your life, the way of blame, is a important spiritual, psychological method of elevating yourself and spreading love and light to those around you. I can't speak highly enough on the path of blame. Has anybody ever heard of this before? All right. Moving along, the Shataria method. This is called the rapid method, and it's extremely dangerous and highly effective. So I'm going to tell you about it. The Shataria method is not about negating the ego. It's not about negating. It's only about affirming. It's continuously maintaining a thought in mind, like Mansur al-Khalaj, Anna al-Haq, I am the truth, I am Haq. That is absolute shirk in Orthodox Islam to even utter, to think such a thing. I am one. I am he whom I love, and he whom I love is me. Having these thoughts, self-affirming, I, self, law, and master, these thoughts can help you affirm your true identity, your true self. But it's dangerous because the ego will, in every opportunity, seek to hijack that. And then you've only grown your ego. So this method is best almost exclusively under the direct guidance of a teacher or somebody else to keep you accountable. Obviously, zikr, the remembrance and invocation of Allah, is a crucial part of purifying the psyche and getting back to our true self. Zikr comes in many forms. There's the zikr of the tongue, zikr of the breath we did earlier. There's zikr of the heart, zikr qalb. Zikr is at the forefront of the mind. You are actively thinking, Allah, 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 or La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. In Persian, there is a term called yad, which means essential remembrance. So what's the difference between that and zikr? The difference between zikr and yad is that whereas zikr is at the forefront of your mind, yad, it's at the back of the mind. It's like a constant white noise. It's background noise. You're not consciously saying to yourself, Allah, Allah, yet you're still aware that zikr is occurring without you deliberately doing it. It's like walking into a room and smelling an apple pie. You don't have to think apple pie, you know by smelling. You don't have to look at it, you don't have to think about it, you don't have to imagine what an apple pie looks like. You get a waft of the fragrance and it's there, you know. You're just completely aware. And you exist with that awareness, that fragrance lingering. That's the difference between zikr and yad. Continuing. Oh, a word that we've talked about previously, tarbiyah nafs. Tarbiyah simply means self-development. So if you have a bad habit, you need to work on that habit. You need to overcome that obstacle. You need to develop self. I think that's sort of self-explanatory. And since we're kind of cutting close to time, I want to keep moving on. This one I'm really looking forward to talking about, sama. A lot of people think sama, when they think sama, they think of the Alevi Bektashis doing sama, or the Mevlevi Sufis, the whirling dervishes. They think sama as dance and singing, or the Chishti Sufis, they do sama, which is listening to qawwali music. Sama means listening. From a spiritual psychology perspective, listening does not involve dancing, singing. It's as if it says in scriptures, be still and know that I am God. Allah speaks in silence. Listen. You can't hear unless you're listening. You can't receive unless you're receptive. This is the essence of sama. I also have a teaching that I received from a Naqshbandi Cheikh, Thakur Ram Singh Ji, from Uttar Pradesh. That teaching is called Sarmapan. I'm probably saying that poorly, but in short, that means letting go of all else but God, complete detachment. Be in the world, but not of the world. Be in the marketplace, but be with Allah internally. Let go of conventions, customs, expectations, selfish desires. Let go of your identity. Use them if need be. You wear a coat, and when the coat no longer serves its purpose, you take the coat off. You have no attachment to the coat. You use it. It has no value other than the need it has within that moment, and then you disregard it. You put it down. And there's a Islamic Sufi story about Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, in which case his only possessions were, I believe, a wool cloak, Sufi dervish cloak, and a bowl. Until he saw somebody drinking with their bare hands, he disregarded the bowl, no longer needing it. Okay, so we're moving on to our next section. And this is called the science of tawajo. Has anybody heard this word before, tawajo? So if you have the figures I sent in the chat message earlier, please look at figure 2. And I've entitled this Tawajo e Qalb. Now, tawajo has several layers of meaning. It means transmission. It means transmission of divine grace. It means focused awareness. It is the direct transmission of spiritual grace and energy from master to disciple, with or without the need to be in the physical proximity of that master. It is advanced spiritual science, but it is accessible even to the novice. It's a matter of degrees. So within Tawajo Iqalb, one focuses their awareness on the idea, the subtle idea that the source of divine light is within your own heart. And if you look at the figure, you'll notice it says mind, focused, conscious awareness is directed to the sources of divine light in that heart. And then the divine light in the heart, the focus goes back to your awareness of that. It's cyclical. You can do this while your eyes are open. You can do this with your eyes closed as a meditation. You go deeper and deeper into awareness that the source of divine light is within your heart. But here's the trick. If you really want to add fuel to the fire, if you really want to get the most out of it, there's one more ingredient you need to add. You need to invoke the feeling of love in your heart. Not just having the awareness on your heart, that's crucial. But if you want to take it to another level, you have to invoke the feeling of love. The feeling of love, the excitement you might have had when you were a child going to your favorite place, or the way somebody you love makes you feel, or whatever, any memory that you have that invokes that excited feeling in your heart, that's the type of feeling of love I'm talking about. You invoke that feeling of love with awareness of the source of divine light in your heart, and you maintain that. That is a rapid method of purifying the soul and elevating your consciousness, polishing the mirror of the heart so that that light can reflect within you and radiate outward. This is the way of the masters. There's a story that the Kamal Posh, which means something like blanket wearers, were wandering around. These were mystics looking for truth. And they eventually were approaching the Prophet Muhammad, alaihi wasallam, and one of his companions said, Prophet Muhammad, there's some Camel Posh coming upon us. So they were greeted by the companions and by the Prophet. And the Prophet Muhammad sat down, they sat down, and he didn't say a single word. And they smiled and they left satisfied. Because he conveyed the truth of love in their heart. Using Tawajo, he directed love, the awakening of love in their heart. Some have said this was transmitted first from Muhammad to Abu Bakr in the cave. So how can we transmit that same energy to other people? Tawajul-i mithal. You're sending healing, spiritual awakening light to others. So you focus your awareness on your heart, you invoke the feeling of love, and you place an intent to direct that to others. And that's what the Prophet in this instance did. When you do this long enough, you will get Ithin-i zikr ism Allah. You'll have permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your heart to beat the name Allah, 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 Allah. You feel it chanting the name Allah. You don't need to do it consciously. It happens. You feel it in your heart, in your chest. Not only do you need to have awareness plus the feeling of love, you need to be open to receiving and open to giving. This is the initiation of the heart. Any questions on that? This is one of my favorite practices, probably the practice I do the most, if I was to be honest with you all. Thoughts, questions, concerns? Disagreements?
I got a question. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. What's your question? How can I help answer it?
From the experience of it, right? So I'm trying to make it easy to explain it, not to go too far out the subject. So how would you know if you really experiencing it at the very moment, or do it varies to certain people when it comes out? Like, how do you know you get the answer or the key to open that up, from Allah, subhanahu Allah, to give that love to somebody? How do you do that?
Bismillah. So if I'm understanding, you're saying, how do you know that you sending that energy worked on another person? Or how do you know that Allah has granted you, Izmi Allah, the permission to chant the name Allah in the heart?
Both. However you want to start it off, both. I like to say.
All right, perfect. So typically, when you start this practice, at some point, you become extremely aware of your heartbeat. It's almost as if you ran up the stairs and then sat down. You're almost like slightly out of breath. Slightly. You feel your heart beating in your chest, but you haven't done any physical activity. You haven't been chanting. You've just been sitting there in absolute stillness and silence. That's when you know that the transmission is being brought to you from Allah through the master directly to you. Now, when you're sending it, there's different levels of intuitive knowing on that. But typically, you won't know until they tell you. When you send a letter in the mail the old-fashioned way, you send it and you let it go. You don't think about it anymore. It's done. The course of events are happening. The proper chain sequence of events necessary to bring that letter to the person you wrote it to is going to happen automatically. It's no longer in your hands. You've done your part. Once you start concerning yourself whether or not that has worked, you're interfering with the process. It would be like showing up at the post office and asking them to take you in the back so you can look through to see if your letter was sent. It disrupts the process. So typically, you have to have tawakkul, trust in Allah, that once it's been set in motion, it's been set in motion. Does that answer your question?
I mean, wow, yes.
Praise Allah.
Darrah, alhamdulillah. Thank you, my heart.
Did a Jif Serene Tuba?
Darrah Serene Tuba.
Right. So moving on to our last part, the template. So I've thrown a lot at you. Like I said in the very beginning, I'm going to run through a bunch of stuff. And we could talk about one topic in depth. This could have gone a bunch of different ways, but I wanted to introduce you to some ideas, some topics. So what's the container for all the stuff we've been talking about? Well, that is the fourfold gate. So that is Sharia, Tariqat, Marifat, Hakikat. Now, sometimes you hear Sharia, Tariqat, Hakikat, Marifat. I'm not trying to say one is right, one is wrong. Different Sufi orders say it differently. Just know you have 1 gate, 2 gate, 3 gate, 4 gate. So the first gate that you need to pass through on this journey of purifying the self is the gate of Sharia. In simple, plain language, the Sharia is about character refinement. You are actively working on your character in the gross world. If you used to shortchange people, you're no longer shortchanging people. If you used to use foul language all the time in front of, the elders, you're conscious of it and you're trying not to. You're in the world trying to be a better person. You're trying to live up to social norms. You're trying to be a decent person. Somebody drops 20 bucks on the ground, you don't pocket it, you give it back to them. Simple. You're refining your character no matter what level you're at. Character refinement. This is the gross world. This is alam-i-mulk or alam-i-nasut. And it's the material world. It's the world of manifestation, the world of things coming into being. That's Sharia. Then we go to Tariqah, the inner path. This is, so if Shariat is outer work, Tariqah is inner work. This is the subtle world. This is the formative world. This is the world, the previous one was of the physicality. This is emotional, astral. This is the realm of feelings. This is subtle energy. You know, some people pick up other people's energy. This is that, what I mean by that. The tariqat is Sufism is the tariqat. It's synonymous with the spiritual path, the mystical path, the inward path of sojourning from self, to go on a spiritual hajj to the Kaaba, Allah, which is your own heart, place where Allah resides. Then comes, again, either marifat or hakikat, depending on what order people use. I'm going to say marifat, and that is illumination. You have done the shariat. You're still living in the shariat. You've gone on the inner pathway. You are, you know, in the inner worlds, the inner planes of existence. The alam mythal, and you start to attain light, gnosis, illumination. This is alam-i jabarut, alam-i malakut, alam-i jabarut. This is the world of power, the world of illumination. This is the creative world and the mental world. It's more subtle. And the last realm is the hakikat, or again, the marifat, depending on. And this is unification. This is where you are absolutely one with the oneness of the one. This requires the grace of a spiritual master. You cannot enter that gate on your own. You can get up to the third gate on your own. I mean, it's possible, not likely. It'd be like trying to cross the street with a blindfold on. You could do it, I suppose, but it's probably unlikely. But having somebody guide you across that street, that's the fourth gate. That's the archetypal world, the world of absolute spirit. So to try to illustrate that, if you have the fourth diagram that I drew and sent in the chat, you'll see that the top circle is the Ruh, the spirit. That is pure light, pure light. And that light descends into the realm of aql, which is the intellect, the mind. So if the Ruh is hakikat, absolute truth and oneness, and we go a level down, that's aql, that's marifat, that's illumination. The spiritual center for that is the head. Ruh would be above the head. Aql would be the head. Then comes qalb, and qalb is the heart. You'll see that the qalb is half light and half dark. It is the locus of jihad. There is a spiritual war being waged, and that war is being waged in your heart. This is the area where we are purifying. The Ruh's pure. The aql, being an almost picture-perfect image of the Ruh, is also pure, but it gets stained by the darkness of the heart. We need to make the heart pure and light. That is the tariqah. That's where we start. That's where the spiritual path starts, and that's where it ends, in the heart. And one stage down is the nafs, and that is synonymous with the navel or the gut. Although it's dark, it doesn't mean it's bad. All right, the nafs is the ego. The ego needs to exist. Imagine making a stew and not putting any salt in it. A little bit of salt adds flavor, but imagine if your stew was governed by salt, it would be worthless. So we don't mind having that little bit of rascality, that little bit of individuality given to us by the nafs, but the nafs can't think it's in charge. That's the difference. The nafs is trying to take charge of the heart, and the akal wants to help take care of the heart. The heart needs to be pure and reflect the light of intellect, which comes from the light of God. Praise Allah. I ran through all the notes that I made for this class. Does anybody have any questions or feedback? I apologize if it seemed disconjointed. I asked Allah, what do you want me to talk about? And the answer I felt like I received was this. I didn't feel that I was necessarily ready to talk about all of this. But, you know, when the master tells you to do something, you do it. And so that's what this is. And I appreciate you all being with me to do that.
Peace.
Peace.
Man, I appreciate you, Cheikh.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
These your teachings is essential. Sheikh Sufi recently dropped a video called "The Foundation," and you know he teaches a lot about zikr, but what you teach is what happens internally as you go on the path, as you continue to, implement the teachings from the Sheikh. That's what you sharing is again especially what your examples were, an inner understanding or more of a personal experience, an inner understanding and actual teachings, and I want to more say experiences of what happens internally or what's needed internally, the self-awareness, the different techniques that you were sharing, what's needed as you begin to master essentially the different levels of the soul. So I really appreciate that and give thanks for your teaching, Cheikh.
All praises due to Allah. Thank you for those kind words. This is esoteric Sufism. Sufism is, I think I might have said in the introduction, applied spiritual psychology. Sufism is to be lived. I've been guilty of this, so I'm gonna blame myself. I'm gonna put myself out there in the open. There have been plenty of times where I've been trying to collect information, thinking that if I wrote these notes down or if I was privy to some esoteric wisdom, I must be doing something right. But I was just gratifying the ego's desire to collect, to be a knowledge collector, have an intellectual grasp on it. I mean, it's like being able to learn French so you can take your spouse to a fancy French restaurant and you can pronounce all the stuff on the menu, but you actually don't know what you're saying, and you can't communicate it to the waiter. How are you going to get your entree? Right? It's like the path is about experiential understanding, experiential wisdom. There's an old Sufi proverb. What do you call an ass, a donkey, an ass with a bunch of Sufi wisdom books on it? Anybody know? You call it an ass. Right? So just because you have books or you have these teachings, if you don't apply them, they're useless. So I've been guilty of that. I'll be the first to admit it. And that's hopefully, you know, this class kind of gave a little insight into the application and how you can apply these teachings, the teachings given by Sheikh Sufi, the teachings shared here, and the teachings that we receive in our other Darrah classes, and how to transmute the knowledge into experiential wisdom. Thank you. Anybody else? I know somebody else has to have a thought. All right. Well, if nobody else has anything else to, any questions or anything that they would like to share, we'll close out by reciting Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amin. Barke Shaky Brafal, 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 Barke Shake Ibrafal. I'll hang back for a few more minutes in case anybody still wish to chat. But the class is formally closed.
Peace, Sheikh.
Peace, peace.
Will this video be posted on YouTube? Do you know?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how that process actually functions. There's a lot of amazing, dedicated murids behind the scenes who make sure that the that flyers get made, that videos get posted, and all that stuff. Regrettably, I'm not actually part of that process, so I couldn't give you an answer. But it seems to be that these videos are published usually within a day or two. Seems to be my experience.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, this is another video. I need to watch it again.
And if you watch it again and you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm in the group, and we'll go through that information.
Raheem, bye. Okay.
Yeah, that's all right. Praise be to Allah.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum. I got one more question.
Alaikum assalam. Give it to me.
Is your name is Sheikh Raheem Ba?
That is correct.
So Raheem Ba, would that be a good zikr to zikr out? Raheem Ba. Raheem Ba.
So you can do that zikr. When I give you permission to use that zikr. If you feel that zikr will benefit you, you have idhin, permission to use it.
I'll let you know in a week. 313 times. Day and night.
Praise Allah.
Alhamdulillah.
Good luck and let me know.
I'll let you know.
All right. Peace. Praise Allah.
Praise Allah.
Have you heard of a psychologist named Anian Smith?
I have not. I'm not familiar with that psychologist.
He I might be pronouncing it wrong. If there was a way I could send it to you, I would like to, but can I send it to you through the WhatsApp?
Yeah, please do.
All right. He just made me think of your talk. He was talking about he proposed this theory and the concept, the idea that the human mind actually is constantly hallucinating. That the human brain, I mean, doesn't see anything. The human eyeball does, and the eye is basically transmitting that information to the brain, and the brain is constructing it. That basically there's no way to determine what reality really is, and I don't know. Just that's what made me think of when you were talking about the la la la. So I just thought you might find it interesting.
Yes, that is spiritually true. Yeah, what you're saying, what that is true. You know, a good example is if you are, you know, watching a movie. Let's say you're in the movie theater, you're watching a movie, and you know that you're watching a projection on a screen. You're watching characters who are not real, having very real human experiences, and it invokes emotions from you. If you see something very tragic, you may feel sad. Something very happy, yeah, you might feel happy. You emotionally respond to the illusion that you're observing. All right. But what you're observing is not real. It's an illusion. It's untrue. So that it's the same thing. That's how we exist in this world. We exist and everything is illusion, and we react to it as if it's real because it's constructed. Paradoxically, it is real because everything is a law, but not in the way that the egoic mind interprets it. Thus, the spiritual path is a paradox. But you're correct.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just I guess to build off of the whole la 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 thing, the idea, I guess, would be if you could at least say from a psychological perspective that you as an individual can't really determine what is real and what isn't because your brain is just interpreting those signals. Well, if you're going that far to say that reality is a hallucination that your brain is constructing to interpret what's happening, then it's also on a deeper spiritual level true as well that when you experience seeing other people, communicating with other people, when you make mistakes or make flaws around people or because of people or they make mistakes or towards you, that's also part of the illusion and you're learning from yourself.
Yes, that is correct. My one of my teachers was a Bektashi dervish from Turkey, and he made it a point by saying, "Don't forget that everyone and everything is your sheikh. Everyone and everything is your sheikh. The guy that's rude to you, the person who loves you, the 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 uh, the the table leg that you stubbed your toe on is your sheikh. Everything is your teacher if you're open to receive that teaching."
Right.
So that's exactly what you're talking about, it sounds like. The only problem is we put ourselves in the way. We think egoically. You stub your toe, you know, son of a gun, why did that happen to me? That's where the problem comes in. But if you stub your toe and you say, Alhamdulillah, praise Allah, it's a different experience.
Well, and the thing is, I don't know, it does feel like you're trying to build a staircase of understanding by saying like, here's where these stages of spiritual development are, and here's where how you go up this staircase to this higher level. But when you get to the top, like you can't quite make it over that final step without the help or assistance of someone.
That is correct.
I think what it is that like it comes down to the way they perceive that spiritual master perceives the world. can't be explained in to quote Terrence McKenna, you can't explain it in tiny mouth noises.
Yeah, that's correct.
Sometimes words just cannot encapsulate what the experience is, and so sometimes you have to be around that person and experience how they perceive it.
That is correct. And also operating on the subtle inner planes, the spiritual master does not necessarily need to be physically present. They are always present in your heart. They are guiding you, but this is where we talked earlier about the language of God, the language of Allah's silence, the importance of sama, listening to the language of silence. That we can do a whole teaching on that sometime. So, yeah. Well, Brother Latif and everybody else, I do need to get going. And I thank you all for staying with me and for your, being present and giving me the opportunity to work through some of these ideas and share them with you. And I look forward to doing it again, inshallah. I hope you all take care. Jummah Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum.
Gratitude and thanks.
Wa alaikum assalam.